How are we doing, guys? I'm Mr. Sturz checking in. Today's LEQ is what are other mechanisms of evolution? So we already talked about natural selection. We talked about fossils, comparative anatomy, biogeography. Those are all evidence of evolution. So there's actually a couple more we're going to get into today, especially when we're talking about gene flow and genetic drift. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is the 4 variations within a population. So the four variations that can cause a variation within a population are natural selection, mutation, genetic drift, and gene flow. So we already talked about natural selection, how that's survival of the fittest. So those most fit organisms, those genes are going to be passed on, while the other genes will not. So remember that the part about the giraffe. So over time, the giraffes with the longer necks and the longer legs survived because they were able to reach the food in the trees, while the giraffes with the shorter neck and the shorter legs eventually died out because they could no longer get to food. We hit mutations when we're talking about meiosis, mitosis, all of those. Those are just changes in the gene sequence. Genetic drift and gene flow is what this video is going to be talking about today. So first you need to know what frequency is, though. And you may have seen it in mass, but frequency is the rate at which something occurs. So for example, you have the sample population. You get a heterozygous black allele 48% of the time, so that's the frequency. So 48% of the time, you're going to have heterozygous black, or 36% of the time is going to be homozygous brown, or 16% of the time is homozygous black. So once again, frequency is just the rate at which something occurs, because genetic drift and gene flow are going to be affecting this frequency, as you see throughout this video. So now, looking at genetic drift. What genetic drift is this? It's the change in allele frequency over time due to chance. So that can be like random chance, like a catastrophe, a new mutation, a predator, anything like that. So it's just, if you look at this picture, notice you have the starting allele frequency. There's 3 green and 6 brown. Now, randomly due to chance, 2 of those green bugs got squished. Now, the allele frequency has changed because instead of having 3 and 6, it's now 1 and 6. So that genetic drift, main thing to remember, it changes the allele frequency and it's due to chance. Random events there that they have no control over. And when it comes to affecting the populations, it affects allele frequency by causing genes to disappear and reduce genetic variation. So notice the genes in that green bug are eventually going to disappear over time because of that person stepping on those 2. And then genetic variation. Think about it. There is less genetic variation within that population of bugs because now there is 6 of one color and 1 of the other instead of 3 of the green and 6 of the brown. So genetic drift causes genes to disappear and reduce genetic variation. Even look at this one. So look at this, let's say, starting population here. Over time, that pink population is getting eliminated, to the point where now there's 3 and then there's actually 4. But look at the end result. So we started with 3 of those, light blue or light purple with nothing in them circles. And then because of genetic drift, that last bottle is completely full of them. So it decreased, it caused genes to disappear. A lot of these pink genes and a lot of the genes that had 1 circle or anything like that disappeared, and then it reduced genetic variation. We had a lot of genetic variation here, where in this end result, we did not. And to help with genetic drift, we're going to go to a short video by the Amoeba Sisters on it real quick to kind of compare it. And then we'll come back to gene flow.
So here's a question for you. Have you ever compared the candy you get on Halloween with your friends? My sister and I, a bit competitive in the sport of Halloween candy hunting, we both had preferences of which kind of candy we hoped to get in our buckets each year. And as for me, I love gummy bears. And every once in a while, someone would have them mixed in a big bucket, and I remember watching with intense focus the hand that picked out the candy, hoping for gummy bears. Getting those gummy bears was always total luck, total chance. Well, unless of course the entire bucket they had was actually gummy bears, but that would not be luck. That would be pure bliss. But that's never happened to me. Yet. So why bring this up? Well, what if instead of candy we were talking about insects? And they weren't in a Halloween bucket because that'd be kind of gross. They're on the sidewalk. And when you're scooter riding through the neighborhood on Halloween to collect candy because scooters may or may not be our super awesome childhood mode of transportation, you squash some. accidentally, of course, because you like insects overall. Were the ones that survived better adapted? Did they have some special ability to foresee events or to move your scooter away from them? Well, assuming they were all just there on the sidewalk in the path of your trick-or-treating, then no. In this random event example, the survivors were not better adapted. They were lucky. It was chance. And the ones that were squashed were, in this case, at the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's what genetic drift is. Genetic drift can change allele frequencies in a population. Remember,
So that video did a good job there, kind of just showing you natural selection, or sorry, genetic drift by, the way the insects on the sidewalk, same thing kind of with getting squished by a shoe, is all due to chance. So now, in comparison that to natural selection, remember natural selection is not due to chance. Natural selection is survival of the fittest, so those organisms that are best suited to the environment will survive. So genetic drift is due to chance, whereas natural selection is not due to chance. And then moving on to the next one, we're talking about gene flow. So gene flow is a transfer of genes or alleles from one population to another. So notice here you have population A and then population B. Notice population B is full of all these red birds. Population A is full of all these blue birds. Now, gene flow is saying that those genes of the blue bird are going to eventually flow into the genes of the red bird, and then genes of the red bird are going to eventually flow into the genes of the blue bird. And then it has a tendency to affect populations, but more in the sense of different than genetic drift. Because in gene flow, you increase the populations by increasing new alleles, and it also causes increased population and variation. So notice now, you have this population here of these purple bugs, and then you're adding a purple bug in this population of brown bugs. So now you're actually increasing the population because you added one more, but you're also increasing variation because notice now it's not just 100% brown, it's 99% brown, 1% purple. But over time, those new alleles, that purple allele, will eventually get mixed into that gene pool. And then so that's going to cause that variation. So there's actually be an increase in variation instead of decrease in variation like genetic drift. So gene flow is actually increasing the new alleles and increasing population and variation, while genetic drift actually decreases that variation and decreases that population there. And then so moving on to the last thing, we never really gave a definitive definition of what evolution is, but evolution is just a change in characteristics of a population over consecutive generations. So, over consecutive generations, we talked about human evolution. Over time, humans, those brains got bigger, the jaws got smaller. That bowl-shaped pelvis we talked about helped us walk. So that's just, once again, evolution is just a change in characteristics of populations over consecutive generations. And all the things we talked about, mutation, natural selection, genetic drift, gene flow, those are all evidence of evolution to support why organisms have changed over time, whether it's genetic drift where it decreases variation or gene flow where it increases variation. So that brings us to the end of our video. Make sure you get that left page done. This is Mr. Is signing out.